everyone this morning, and thank you all for being here with us today. Of course, I'm happy to see everyone, but I do want to recognize a couple of people. Kyle Burgess, our vice chair on our board with Minkin Employment Lawyers, and we have James Daigle, one of our directors, who is also on the call from Tree Frog, and Shauna Fardy, another one of our directors from Sun Life Financial. So thank you for joining us today. This morning, I did get a note from, as I usually do, from 680 News with the top stories. And I saw that one of the first things they said was less than a year after the mysterious illness was discovered in China, the world's first patient who was not part of a clinical trial just got her shot in the arm to prevent her from getting sick. So it felt like a bit of a historic moment, a bit of a pivotal moment for us. And I just thought a little bit of a glimmer on the horizon there that I would recognize this morning. It feels definitely like perhaps there's hope of us seeing each other face to face again, but it seems fitting on this final breakfast networking that we're doing online today. And I just wanted to mention a couple of things that we have on the horizon in the new year that I'm excited about. So coming up in the new year, we have our Business Thrives Conference in partnership with York University. February 2nd and 4th. So that one's coming up quickly and we'll get news out to you as soon as we can on that. We're doing a real estate summit in March, a look at industrial, commercial, and residential real estate now and through the recovery. And of course, our Women in Business Luncheon with our Women of Business Excellence Awards. There will be one Women of Excellence Award this year, and we'll be getting news out to you on that. Very shortly. We're doing that with New Roads again, as we did last year. So some exciting things coming up this year. And I think, do I have Adam on the call? Hi, is Adam? Oh, I see you, Adam. So I just wanted to introduce Adam Sapelsa, who is part of our advocacy team, to give us a quick update.
Sure. So the main update that I have for everyone this morning is regarding the federal budget that was obviously announced last Monday. So that's just given us a couple more sort of program details of how some of the existing programs are going to continue and potentially change, and potentially some of the new programs that are going to be introduced as well. So just a very quick fiscal snapshot. Those that are interested in that sort of thing. The public spending on the pandemic has increased by 381 billion to the end of 2020. But the government's sort of announced their sort of first steps of recovery spending, and they're looking to spend 3 to 4% GDP to revive the economy post-COVID-19. That'll all be announced in the budget, which we're expecting to come out in April. So that will hopefully give us a couple more sort of more specified response measures. But regarding sort of the most relevant points for businesses, the first thing that has been changed is the wage subsidy is going to stay at the 75% rate until the 13th of March. Originally, it was set to stay until December the 20th, but I think they're sort of expecting that's going to be after the sort of first set of vaccines are out. So I think they're hoping to see some sort of economic recovery at that point. Originally, it had been set to decline on a sliding scale. At one point, it was down to 65%, but they've just sort of bumped that up, and they're keeping it there for the foreseeable future, or at least until March. Now, the other thing is they've obviously just introduced the Canada Emergency Rent Subsidy program. That as well is going to keep its current rates until March 13th, 2021. And then that program as well is going to run until June 2021. And so businesses that have that have experienced a decline in revenue due to COVID-19 will have 65% of their rent covered. And then businesses that have been forced to close due to government mandated shutdown can have up to 90% covered. So within Ontario, that's specifically those that fall within either the grey lockdown or the red control areas. So in theory, businesses in new markets should be eligible for that. It replaces the CESA program, and the key difference is that it no longer requires landlord input. So basically, with that original rent program, you had to have landlord buy-in, which I think was a bit unpopular across the board, but luckily that's they've changed that now. So if you are interested in applying to that program, there shouldn't be too many impediments. And it runs retroactively from September 27th. Obviously, one of the things the Chamber has been campaigning for pretty hard from the get-go with this has been support for some of the hardest hit sectors, specifically tourism, hotels, arts and culture, and the air sectors, so that's airlines and airports. And so there's a new program that is scheduled to be launched called the Highly Affected Sectors Credit Availability Program, or HASCAP, which is looking to offer essentially government loans of up to $1 million over 10 years to support businesses in these areas that have obviously been heavily affected. So the rates will be similar to those offered by the Business Credit Availability Program, which is obviously a program that's been running from March, and companies are asked to work with their financial institutions to attain the loan, the terms for it. There's also been an update in terms of childcare. They're going to provide temporary support of $1,200 in 2021 for each child under the age of 6 for families entitled to the kind of child benefit. The Large Employer Financing Facility Program, which was aimed at obviously large companies, is also to be expected to be expanded further to try and essentially create an uptick in companies applying to it. There's also been a bit of movement on the skills file, an investment of $575 million over the next 2 years for the youth employment and strategy, which is looking to essentially get around 45,000 job placements for young people. And the final point that I have as well is obviously just a quick reminder that the SEBA loan has been extended until 2021, which I think is across the board been one of the programs that's been adopted fairly heavily. So if that's something you haven't looked into yet, it may be useful, and it has been extended for a longer period. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Adam. I'm not sure if anybody has any specific questions, but I think we'll leave those to the end anyway. I want to make sure that we get through. And if you do have a question, just you can put it in the chat as well, and we will make sure that you get an answer to that. When you were talking, Adam, with your accent, I thought I heard the great lockdown versus the gray lockdown areas. So I was like, ooh, that's a historic sounding.
Well, if that does enter the lexicon, I'm claiming it that I made it.
Okay, well, that's fine. We'll let you do that. One thing I did forget to do is invite everyone, if you haven't already registered for it. December 10th, this Thursday, is our AGM. It's at noon, and we would love to have you join. And it's important for us to have member representation at that, because you're voting in your new board, as well as looking at our financials. So that sounds fun. And we're going to have Rocco Rossi as well from the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, who's going to start us off and be our keynote at the front end of it. So we'll also do some networking and try to have some fun and some giveaways. So join us on Thursday if you can. I'd like to turn it over now to Pat Lusink, who's the general manager with the Best Western Voyageur Place Hotel. Best Western actually has made our breakfasts possible through the year, as well as these online breakfasts. And they just won at our recent Business Excellence Awards, the Hospitality Business of the Year. So over to you, Pat.
Thank you very much. And we are very pleased to have won that award. Thank you. It was quite an honor. We actually had a little bit of fun this weekend at the hotel because there was a film crew here filming a short film. It's a 10-minute character study about a nurse who is living through COVID times and wanted to live in a hotel because she didn't want to be at home because of, risk factors. So they looked around at about 15 or 20 hotels in the GTA and landed on ours. And so this guy, this producer, writer or director, I should say, he had a film accepted into the Cannes Film Festival last year, as well as TIFF. So maybe this next one will be accepted as well into some fancy international film festivals, and Newmarket will be on the big screens. So that was kind of fun. I'm here to introduce Sean Stevens, and I've changed some of the words in your bio, Sean. I hope you don't mind. So instead of launching, Sean leapt into the world of the web in 1997 when .coms were plentiful and the rules were changing daily. He immersed himself in the technology of websites and servers, databases, and programming languages. In 2001, Sean moved into his current role as CEO of Tree Frog Inc. Sean is an active speaker, definitely, and regularly speaks to groups about various subjects relating to internet technologies. Drawing on his diverse background, signature green hair, technical knowledge, and creativity, Sean puts practical tips and ideas forward to help people learn how to grow their business. Take it over, Sean.
Yay, thank you. And do you mind if I share a screen as well? I have, is that okay? I have a presentation here. Can everybody see?
Yeah.
Yay. So I've got a presentation, and in fact, similar to the way I typically work, I've got probably 4 hours of condensed information that I'm going to put into 15 minutes. I love that kind of presentation. But hopefully it'll wake you guys up this morning and give you lots to think about, and we'll have some fun. And this is not actually real green hair, for those of you who don't know me. It's just an artificial intelligence thing that I've got going on my computer. It's true. So from a brand perspective, for those of you who haven't driven by the building right beside South Lake, we are at Tree Frog, obviously for reasons of the vid. We are not here at the moment. So if you were to come by and knock on the door, you know, you might get somebody waiting at the door to collect packages, but there's actually not anybody there. But when this is all over, we'd love to see you in person. Otherwise, we'd love to see you digitally as we go. And I'm super proud about this fact. There was a study done in the States that showed that communities that had really strong digital agencies actually as a community had $1,700 more per household because of all the support for businesses, better websites, better technologies, et cetera, that we tend to bring. And we've got a couple of great companies. RC Design won the Small Business of the Year award. We're here, and there's some others. And honestly, we're just very lucky as a community to have great support from digital agencies. And I'm very proud of being part of that because I think that we've added a lot of value to the local community. But I want to talk about what does Tree Frog do. We are not a website company or digital marketing agency. We're actually a digital transformation agency. So for those of you who don't know what digital transformation is, basically that's enhancing your customer experience, applying. I'm not going to read all these things because basically it's 4 things. It's improving customer experience and creating emotional connections with people. It's increasing competitive advantages or adding competitive advantages to your business. It's advancing the capability of your business, innovating and trying, and then creating strong infrastructure. So we actually have a roadmap. We have a way of helping businesses grow from the very beginning all the way through. And what we've found is that if we help somebody with one thing, often it's the wrong thing. It doesn't help them grow. We have to go back to the very, very beginning to help you grow from the start. So let me explain. Depending on the size of business that you are, if you're really small, you're sort of proto-founder just coming up with an idea, or you've got a couple of people working, or you actually work for a large organization which has 30,000 people working at it. The fact is your needs will change as your business grows. It'll change in terms of how the entrepreneur, how the founders are involved in the organization, and how much money you need or how much cash, but it also affects how you're going to transform. Because, for example, you might be a business that has a really strong website, but actually a pretty dated brand that's not digital friendly. You might be doing great on social media, but you have problems with your efficiencies, et cetera. And what happens is businesses grow with strengths in different areas and thus limit themselves because there's places where they have weaknesses that they could improve. So what Tree Frog does is we look at the business and we say, where can we help you the most? Let's go back to the beginning and try and clean up that mess. So this is what the digital transformation roadmap looks like, and this is what Tree Frog is doing these days. Number 1, it's about driving branding, websites, marketing. It's about modernization. Let me get into more information. It's about helping grow the business, finding more money through marketing and digital strategies. It's about helping find efficiencies so that you can modernize and actually get more sales, make more things happen. And then it's also about finding competitive advantage, finding cool things the business can do. And in fact, through every layer of the business, so when you first start, you've got a first idea, you shouldn't be spending $75,000 on branding because you don't need to. You basically just need a quick logo and go to 99 Designs or something. But as you grow, you want to professionalize, all of these steps require that you go through the process again and again in order to digitally transform over and over again. And what's interesting here is not only is there sort of a downwards momentum from marketing to modernization to innovation, there's also a cadence from left to right, which is focus on the customer, focus on the customer experience. Once you've got a great customer experience, creating great experiences with a great emotional connection, then you can move into finding competitive advantages. Then you can move into driving advanced capabilities. So that sort of model, that sort of idea is what Tree Frog is about. And actually, we've codified this over the last year. We've just spent so much time, obviously at home, thinking about how do we make this work, and figured out what the process is of each one of these steps to absolutely nail it in each case. So for example, branding, depending on the size of business you are, will do something different. The website technology you're going to use is going to be different. The technological infrastructure is going to be different. And the costs, et cetera, are going to be relevant. So in this group, you'll see James. And James is our entrepreneur specialist. And in fact, we were just certified, this is not official yet, so this is a secret, as one of Canada's first accelerators. So we are accelerating. James is actually running that. And we are going to be helping startups, specifically tech startups who have great, cool ideas for apps and great, cool ideas. And James is going to be leading that charge. And then we have Lindsay, who helps us with small business growth and how we can grow that. And then that continues up until billion-dollar organizations that we work with through digital transformation. And so, yes, we do branding. Yes, we do websites. Yes, we do digital marketing. But we also do integrations with systems, mobile app development, hosting. We build robots. We just had our first robot go live at South Lake in the last week or 2 weeks. We build artificial intelligence. We do IoT and blah, blah, blah. Okay, how am I doing for time? I've only used 5 minutes. Great, because now the presentation starts. I can't wait to tell you about how to completely revolutionize your brand, which is step one in the process of digital transformation. You can have all the artificial intelligence you want, but if you can't make your customers want to come back, you will not be successful. So how does branding work? What does that look like? Let's just talk about what brand is. So brand is not a logo. I'm going to say that 20 times today. Brand is not a logo. Brand is the entire feeling that people have around your organization. It's the emotional connection. And then it's all the artifacts which make that up. So that can be something like a logo. Sure, that's a symbol, but it can also be the expectation that people have when they pick up the phone. It can be the expectation of the letter that they get. It can be the expectation of the service that they get. And if that service is consistent, then it becomes your brand. And so branding becomes the thing that reminds me of what you are. And why is that important? It's important because people absorb information from sources they know, like, and trust. Y'all know this. You're at a Chamber of Commerce meeting. You're going to more likely do business with each other because you know each other, more likely because you're going to like one another because you have a relationship, and you're going to trust because you've had a consistent experience over and over and over again, and that leads to credibility, and that reduces risk. All sales is about reduction of risk. If I want to be able to buy something, work with something, or work with a group, or work with a person that I know is going to achieve the thing that I've asked you to do, or the product that I've asked you to buy, and that is totally embedded in my memory. So I believe that this will work, and thus I will buy from you. And I do that because of trust, and I do that because I know, like, and trust you. So I know, like, and trust you. So how do you remind people you know, like, and trust? Now, I love this example. It's my favorite branding example. Water. Every single one of you suckers has bought bottled water in the last few months, right? At least one bottle, right? You can drink your fill of water for about 15 cents out of a tap. Or you can live off bottled water, ruin the environment, do all sorts of other stuff, drinking out of a bottle. However, a lot of people say, yeah, well, tap water tastes terrible and bottled water tastes great. Sure, a couple of points here. One is that bottled water is actually more expensive than gasoline per capita, right? Per gallon. So it's more expensive than milk, it's more expensive than Clorox. It's a very expensive liquid, which is bizarre, because there's lots and lots of scientific evidence that shows that, in fact, very, very few human beings can taste the difference between tap water and bottled water, like 1%. Not only that, but Coca-Cola was dragged, I think it was last year or the year before, because in England, they were just taking the water out of the tap and bottling it and selling it in a pretty bottle. True story, right? And yet, we have a preference for which bottled water we drink. And we have this emotional connection with it because we believe in the experience. It reminds us of this amazing experience that we once had. And that is the best example of brand. You are literally buying water. You're not, you're buying the brand, you're buying the connection, you're buying the experience that you had with that thing. So how can you get that? How do you get that identity? How do you get that memory? How do you create that memory in people? How do you connect that experience with people? How do you get all of your team members proud of the fact that they're part of a thing? And that thing is the emotional connection that you guys have. And how do you stand out? So that's the question. And I think this is fascinating. It's not just about standing out because you want to, be better than everybody. It just has to be a consistent experience. Even if the consistent experience is bad, you just it has to be consistent. You can have a brand that is a negative brand, but it's not really negative. It's the idea that I know that when I go back there, I've reduced my risk and I can trust that I'm going to get the same activity. So we always think about a brand as a symbol, but it's not. It's the products and services, the slogan, it's the packaging, it's how people dress at my company, how people act, how we answer the phone. That's all brand. And it affects the way we act at work. It affects the way we sell things. It affects who comes to work for us. It affects the likelihood that we're going to sell the thing that we're trying to sell. So the first question is what makes you you? You could probably go away and spend, after this meeting, spend a good half an hour going, am I really who I am? Is my brand really me? Is that experience really consistent? Or every single time somebody comes to visit, is it slightly different? So the question is, what is the stuff, what's the secret sauce that you have, which doesn't have to be the fact that you're water or not water. It's literally, it's just the way, it's just the experience, the way people feel when they come to you. And is that consistent? Is that real? So what is it that you want people to remember? And here's the thing is you can break this down to all sorts of ways. Just out of interest, out there, somebody unmute. How old is Google? Like when you imagine Google as a human being, how old are they? Anybody?
22 years.
Right? We still think of Google as some like kids in a basement wearing sneakers, right? You know, and like poking away at a computer. This is a multi-billion-dollar company. They do not do that, but we think of that. Okay, how old is IBM? When you think of the person that works at IBM, that person, what is that? How old?
Like 100.
100? Okay, I'm sure IBM would be very unhappy to hear that. I think they're going more for like the 50s thing, you know, and we all imagine Apple as sort of Steve Jobs. This is not relevant at all. Obviously, they have people from every walk of life and every age group working in each one of these organizations for various reasons. But the brand, the thing, the experience is those things. You can actually have a brand shape. Is it hierarchical? Is it we're working together? You can have a brand smell. You can have a brand color. Brand can be anything. The artifacts of brand can be anything as long as they can be a haircut. They can be anything that remind me of a consistent experience, whether that's good or bad. It's just a memory. This is also fascinating. Did you know that almost all employees know what car the CEO drives? And it's highly representative of the culture, of the feel, of the brand of the organization. So, you know, Warren Buffett drives an old Lincoln Town Car. My favorite is Amazon's Jeff Bezos. We all know, despite the fact that he's like a trillionaire now, there's insane money going through his pockets, but everybody knows him as the guy who drives the 1996 Honda Accord, right? I don't know if you knew that or not, but he's well known for driving to work in 1996. Yes, he owns $100 million in other vehicles, for the record, but we know him as the guy who drives. So here's a question is, what do you drive? I'm not saying, this is just because car companies have been so good for so long of selling the idea that you are your car, that we've actually started to connect the idea of our brand to a vehicle, right? We're boxy and we're safe, or we're frugal, or we're pompous, whatever that is, whoever you are, and all the artifacts that come around it, that is brand. Everybody in the room recognizes this picture, right? You've all seen this before, and you instantly know what this is. This is a concept, what we call Smashable Brands. That's a great book by Martin Lundstrom. And the idea here is that even from a small piece, a shard of a bottle of, you guys know what this is, Coke bottle, all you see is a little tiny piece of glass, which could be a stone for all we know, but there's a couple of letters on it from a piece of a logo that's so embedded. And this is water with a little bit of sugar and syrup and a little bit of secret sauce, but we connect with the idea because they've been branding us for so long. And they figured out early that they were going to have all of these identity things. And if we just saw a small artifact, a small piece of a broken piece of this, we'd be reminded of this. You know, I get letters probably once a week of people who are like, oh, I bought a green shirt and it reminded me of you. How do people think of me as somebody who wears a green shirt? I don't even own any green shirts, and yet there's a connection there, and it connects people to an experience. I also think this is funny. You guys probably don't know this, but it's very timely. Coke is actually responsible for Santa being red. In fact, Santa was originally green. I am going to fight for the rights of Santa Claus to return to his original green color. That's one of my missions in life. I also think this is funny because if you take something like a symbol that represents you and you put it on, say, your website, and your website doesn't represent the whole of you, the entire aesthetic, then I have a feeling of dissonance. I don't get it. I don't know why you would ever want to work with a company that kind of feels like they don't really know what they're doing. It's not consistent. It's not all there. And it's as simple as putting an artifact in the wrong place. And I can instantly recognize where that artifact is and why it doesn't make sense. So here's the thing with brand, though, is to create these artifacts, to get started through this process, most of the people in this group already have a business, have been doing it for a while. And the idea of building a brand from scratch is not the right idea. What we want to do is either mature or rebrand. So we want to think about how can we rebrand. So let's talk about what that looks like. Depending on the size of company you are, will depend on how the pieces, what the artifacts, what the pieces are that you'd want to do. So let me take you through the process that in step one of digital transformation of how you go through brand positioning. The first is get all of these emotional connection pieces, the core stuff. You got to get it right. Make sure your voice is correct. Make sure your narrative is correct. Make sure you understand the colors. Maybe even work on some smells or some fashion or whatever that is. What are the key things that matter to you? Step one is brand positioning is just the thought process of what makes you different, special, secret saucy versus everybody else. And that is what we call brand character. So this is the character. If I was a person, what would my brand be? And in fact, this is something that is just about a mirror being held up to you to say, is this you or is this not you? Are you a person of integrity or of risk or of character? Is your business about results, or is your business about customer service? And then you have to be that. You have to be that in everything you do. So that actually is the beginning of brand, is figuring out, really refining what have you been, what are you? And then figure out what are the core values that make me, that make the brand the brand. Then you can actually figure out who are you selling to, and does that match with who we are? If I'm trying to be young and cool and hip and I'm selling to 80-year-olds, probably not going to happen. If I'm about integrity and about steadfastness and I'm selling to 12-year-olds, they probably don't care. So figuring out, does that brand and what people think of you match who you're selling to is critical. Then we can figure out, from a marketing perspective, what are the features, what are the things that makes you special? Then we can figure out what the function is, what the emotions that drive, and then we can create brand artifacts. We can figure out how do we drive those specific reasons to believe. And this drives all marketing, this drives all future interactions with clients. Now, once you've got that, now you know who you are. Now you've got to figure out who your client is. So you've got all these clients that you work with. And we all know that if you really think about who you work with, you're like, I cannot put my thumb on this because of these kinds of people and these kinds of people. How do you figure out exactly who it is you want to talk to? And the fact is that amongst all these people, there is not a giant lever that you can pull. Just one, you walk over and you just pull it and sales drop out. That just doesn't happen, right? So the fact is, what you got to figure out is what all of the levers are, what all of the different pieces are that could potentially lead to the people taking action or being interested in my sale and what you do. So Here is about what are the highest and best values activities that I can do, meaning I can't afford to market, I can't afford to drop flyers from planes to every single house across North America. What I can do is I can afford this, this, and the other. So what's the fastest and best way to get people to believe and get people to buy more stuff from me? So first we group all of these people based on behavioral characteristics. We ask questions. What are they doing? What are the questions they need answered? What's helpful for them? Who are they? Why are they doing that? Connecting that then to figuring out what we call a persona, which is, this is what a specific person looks like. Here's what they spend time doing. Here's what their reaction is. Here's what kind of social media they use, or they don't use social media at all. Here's how we got to communicate with them. Then once you figure that out, we create a journey. This is how the perfect new client or existing client is going to work with us. Here's, we're going to come in, we're going to do this, then we're going to do that, then our decision is going to be made, then we're going to do that. Once you figure that out, we can figure out how we're going to communicate with them. We create what's called a mood board. We come up with imagery. We come up with concepts. We come up with aesthetics that match that. These are the core artifacts that drive that emotional connection of consistency. Then we can work on the logo. We can come up with a symbol. And this is something that's recognizable because we recognize as human beings, just like we can remember songs, we can remember smells, and we can remember simplistic concepts. Hence the logo. We can remember every logo on this page easily. We know what their companies do. We can remember tens of thousands of these. I even have a game called the logo game. And you can actually like remember logo after logo after logo after logo. It's fascinating. And a logo isn't a logo unless you can get a stick out on the beach and actually create an iconographic. Like it doesn't stick with people unless it's really simple. Unless you can carve it in a potato, it's not a logo, it's just an image that you're using inappropriately. It's also, you gotta think about when you're building the symbology is, can you print it on a hat? Can you embroider it on a t-shirt? Because if it's too complex, it will not work. So you've gotta keep it simple. You've gotta have less colors. You've gotta be able to, there's a great game, which is you can ask people, say, to draw the Apple logo. If you guys were to all pull out a pen right now and try to draw the Apple logo, that's just sitting in front of a Mac, you will not be able to do it. Even though in your head you recognize it, it's surprisingly difficult to nail it on the head. And there's also the reality that now that we're in the digital world, you know, a digitally unfriendly brand is one that doesn't fit in the Facebook hole. It doesn't make sense when you're on Twitter. It just doesn't fit anywhere. So you've got to now think of all of these things. And that's what we have to do. We've got to run through all of these concepts, work with you as a team, and then figure out what the aesthetic is that represents you best that can fit all of these criteria. What's more important is this shouldn't be done from scratch. You should be maturing your logo. And if you think about, for example, Pepsi, you don't probably realize this, but they've had multiple iterations of their logo, never leaving the old one behind, but you recognize it, feels like there's some consistency. It's the same with McDonald's. Despite the fact that we know it's the Golden Arches, there has been a fairly significant change over the ages. Ford has had a change. Apple has had a change. UPS has had a change. All sorts of great companies have had changes. Walmart has had a change. I want to give you an example of one that we did a few years ago, which is for a well-known organization. You may remember these guys, Mr. Transmission. So the problem that Mr. Transmission had was that all of their different stores all looked different. And this led to dissonance. They were all sort of acting differently. They were putting stuff out differently. And their logo had sort of matured a little bit, but it was sort of inflexible. We called it the Stanley Cup that had fallen over on its side. It was a transmission, but the transmission was from like a 50s vehicle. So like, what did that imply? That they can't fix modern vehicles? Even though 90% of their work is actually plugging in and doing electronic stuff these days with transmissions. So the reality is that brand was just all over the map. People were doing different stuff. So we took that and said, look, we can't throw away all of that history. We just need to work with it to modernize it, make it look refreshed, give it some life, bring it back to life. And that's what we did. So we just took the same idea, figured out what all the core things that we should keep, what the things we should not keep anymore, and came up with a new modern brand that didn't lose the old brand completely. And now you still recognize it, because you recognize, even though the colors shifted slightly for various reasons, because there's other people like Pizza, which is exactly the same orange, even though there's been shifts, it still stays the same. And this is where you come up with what we call a brand standards guide or brand standards manual. And that can be in the form of a book, it can be in the form of a thing that's on your website, it can be in the form of a poster, but this is how when you communicate as our company, you must communicate in this way. And that's where we get this consistency of aesthetic that reminds people, it lessens the distance, reminds people of who we are, the experience they had, it makes people more likely to work and buy from us again. So there you go. That's it in a nutshell. I think is that 20 minutes? Did I make my time? I want to say that if anyone's interested in talking about brand, please call in the Tree Frog. We can talk about what the process is, how we can do things to make your life easier and to help you create those things. Thank you, Tracy. Brand token.
Thanks, Sean. Gee, I actually thought you were going to show our logo as part of the history of logos that you had done. I'm not sure I could carve it in a potato, but you made it simple enough to do it, which is a good thing. I also learned a new adjective that I'm going to use the heck out of, secret saucy. Loved it. So that'll be new in my vernacular. One of those bottles in the water looked like gin, I'm just saying. Yeah. But anyway, thank you, Sean. And I also want to thank Sean. The energy he brought this morning is the energy he brought to our Business Excellence Awards, but even more exaggerated. So love that. And thank you for that as well, Sean. And I think now with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tyler for us to do some networking, correct,